What's up, y'all? You're listening to the My Aggie Nation podcast. I'm Alex Miller, joined always by the one and only Robert Cessna. Cease, heard you got a clean bill of health at the dentist this morning. Congratulations.
No cavities. All right, huh? Hey. Yeah.
Smiling.
Little cheesy.
Smiling bright for our viewers today.
Need to save the money. You know, what can I say? Cavities cost money.
Yes, they do. Well, hey, over the weekend.
Speaking of shiny teeth, how about those Aggie men's basketball team?
Yeah, and how about Wade Taylor with his 3-point shooting? Look, A&M, they probably should have beat South Carolina by more. I didn't get to watch a whole lot of the game. You did, but just from watching highlights and listening to the post-game radio show, it seemed like A&M at times was about to just pull away and run away with it, and then they kind of went through some scoring droughts, but A&M was just much better than South Carolina, and that seemed to be the difference on a night when Wade Taylor had a vintage performance with 7 threes.
A&M's got a bye this week, so a lot of talk when you talk to people. You mentioned the South Carolina game. When I'm talking to people out at lunch or whatever at church, particularly a lot of people the next day, what I find interesting is when you start talking about men's basketball, and of course they want to talk because, obviously with the newspaper, how many people I talked to said, well, I knew it was going to be close. I expected it, and just talk like we did. We reflect the community like A&M should have won that by more, but they didn't. And so I wonder the players, and Buzz don't take you inside. Hey, it's tough to get inside Buzz's mind sometimes when he's out there in left field, whatever. But it is interesting that no matter what happens, it seems they have a close game. And you got to wonder if the players somewhat, and I don't want to say use the word let up, but it is amazing because that happens. Because Buzz mentioned, like you said in his postgame, 10 2-possession games, which really caught my attention, and I did some research on that. And the top 25, only Connecticut's played more 2-possession games with 11. And but that being said, I think that's a plus that they've won so many. It's not like there's a lot of teams like 4 and 7, let's say, in 2-possession or 1-possession games. Well, then you're bad, but no. A&M's 7 and 3, so that's good.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think that when March rolls around, that should be an intangible that favors you.
You'd hope so.
But, at the same time, there are times when A&M's had chances to really put teams away and get some very comfortable lopsided victories in what's been a very competitive SEC this year, and they haven't been able to do that at times.
Well, what's chuckles is, and numbers can make you do anything. What I find interesting, I even laughed to myself, is I started doing that, and you see a lot of teams don't play close games in the final score because you know what, they're better. Like Auburn just pulls away from people because they're better. Tennessee doesn't play a lot of close games. They either go one way or the other. And I go, well, I guess you really just want to beat the snot out of people if you could. It's somewhat comical, but we love numbers, just like Buzz does. And I think the number one, numbers are they're 6 and 3 in conference play. Now Lenardi's keeps moving them up.
2. They're a 2 seed now.
They were 3 a couple of days ago. So you look at everything is falling A&M's way.
Yeah, A&M being a 2 seed right now, it looks pretty, but the back half of conference play is a lot tougher than the front half. There's no doubt about it, and particularly the last 6 games where they have to play Tennessee and Auburn and Mississippi State on the road, and they got to play at Florida. That's gonna be a pretty pivotal stretch to see how legit is A&M, especially if they're playing at full health, because they lost Alabama and Kentucky, but they were playing without Wade Taylor. And so you can always kind of put an asterisk next to those 2 games. But if they're playing at full health, what difference does that make? Now, they still got to get Solomon Washington back into the lineup. And it's kind of impressive, I think, what they've been able to do on the rebounding side of things without him in the game. Now, I know that South Carolina made it much more even. They're a really good rebounding team. They're really physical in the paint. That was strength on strength going against each other with A&M and South Carolina. So it wasn't surprising to me that the rebounding numbers were what they were. So how much, you mentioned the week off, how much does that benefit Solomon Washington potentially trying to come back in a game against Missouri that at the beginning of the season, I probably would have just chalked that up to a win. I don't think many people had Missouri being a team that would be creeping up into the top half of the seeding potentially for the NCAA tournament, but all of a sudden, Missouri's a really good team, and they got this guy that shoots almost 50% from 3Cs. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, they're one of the surprises, and you touched on a little bit. What's amazing is SEC is so good. You see, Kentucky looked really good. Then they lose to Arkansas and Ole Miss their last two games, so suddenly they plummet in Lenardi's bracketology. Suddenly these games, Missouri's going to say, hey, we beat A&M. We're going to move up one or two spots, maybe one seed or two seeds. So suddenly A&M is, not that they weren't before, you're going to get everybody's best because, man, you beat A&M right now. You talk about a great win for your resume. And as you mentioned, those are all great games for A&M if they win, but they're not going to win all those games. I mean, I hate to say it, it's just really hard. And if they do, then they're up there with Auburn if they're able to do that. So definitely be tested. And everyone knows to play A&M, you're going to have to be a little more physical. To me, A&M's like a wishbone team in football. You don't play a wishbone. It's hard to prepare for them, but sometimes you're going to have to win the line of scrimmage to beat a wishbone team. And to beat A&M, you either have to be very hot from three-point land or you better get in there and get your share of rebounds.
A&M's what, 17-5 overall right now?
I think that's right. 6-3 in the conference.
And 6-3 in the conference. You know, if they were able to go 6-3 on the back half of this SEC play, that would not be bad at all. At 12-6, and then you're looking at what, 23-8 overall going into the SEC tournament. That's a pretty solid resume considering how good the league is this year. If A&M can find a way to go 13-5, that's a cherry on top.
Well, because you look at all the seeds around you, what Lenardi is, whether it's Florida, whether it's Tennessee, or whatever. The league is so good. It's like the Big 12 was the last few years. Losses don't really hurt you very much, not as much as if you're in a weak league. So A&M's got that advantage, and if you win, it's kind of like extra bonuses. If you win, you get time and a half. It's like overtime, so to speak, at your job. You still got to work. You might as well be paid time and a half as opposed to just being paid time. So very good situation about the men's basketball. And like I said, they have a break. It really can't have it much better.
I wouldn't mind having a little time and a half here and there, but
you have to talk to people above me.
Well, hey, on the other side of the basketball equation, the A&M women, it was a rough week for them, losing to Arkansas and then to Texas. We knew that the loss of Coulibaly was going to impact them, but how can A&M find a way to try and salvage things before it gets to where it's just kind of a lost cause for the season?
This is a crucial week. They're playing at Auburn. They're playing at home, Missouri on Super Bowl Sunday. These are two teams that A&M really needs to beat where they're at their 3-6 or what have you, because they got to go to Alabama. Haven't beat anybody yet on the road, so that would be nice to beat Auburn. But kind of like the ship has sailed in a way. What you can see what women's basketball could be. The Texas game was good. There was energy. It was a nice crowd, like 4,300. It was legit. A lot of Texas people, a lot of Texas media here, more Texas media people than possibly A&M because they're 5th or 7th in the country. But there was a lot of buzz around that game, and that's what A&M women have missed since losing Coulibaly. Remember, they had a lot of buzz once they beat Kentucky, and then Kentucky turns around and beats Oklahoma. So, if A&M could have found a way to beat Arkansas, but A&M played just so bad against Arkansas. Arkansas is the worst team in the SEC, and you go like, wow, if I lose to the worst team in the SEC, what does that make me? So if you're the A&M women's basketball players, you didn't want to look in the mirror for a while, but they played well against Texas. What can salvage it? I'd be quite honest. I don't know if they could even make the NIT. They're 10,
they need a winning record
10 or 11.
to do that,
you need a
right?
winning record. It's going to be tough, but they reached a point that they just need to get some positives. They're so young. If they win at Auburn, they'd be excited. It's something that's about me. It's like, hey, it's about me. They need to win at Auburn. They need to come home and beat Missouri. And if they don't, then more people are going to tune them out. We live in a time, all sports, hey, baby, if you're not winning, I'm not going to pay attention to you. It's like there's 30 NFL teams right now. Baby, we don't pay attention to you.
Well, hey, across the street from Reed Arena, over at Davis Diamond, the A&M softball team starting this 2025 season. They're in the top 10. They've got a great team. They got a good tournament this weekend at home. Cease, what's the outlook for the Aggies heading into this season?
I'd say right now they're a 50-50 shot to go to Oklahoma City, which is amazing.
Well, they either would go or they wouldn't. So.
I mean that's our odds. I mean, they're going to be there. Where they're gonna when it's all said and done, when the regular season over, they're going to be a 7 seed, a 6 seed, with means you hope a super regional, or they're going to be a 9 or 10. There's a lot of people in that mix. They play a lot of ranked teams. I mean, they play Texas Tech, who got the Stanford. They got the best pitcher in the country. They play Tech comes down here for a tournament in a few weeks. They play Tech twice. They play Baylor. I think Baylor's number 19 in the coaches poll.
Yeah, they got Baylor this
right
weekend.
Off the bat, Friday night, you're going to see Friday night Olsen Field. Bluebell will be hopping because the weather's supposed to be
Davis
nice.
Diamond.
That too. What did I just going to say?
Bluebell.
Close enough.
There you go.
Holy cow. It won't be at Reed Arena. Let's put it that way. There'll be something WWE over there. Who knows, whatever. But anyway, there going to be a lot of Baylor fans. There's going to be a playoff atmosphere at the second day of the season. That's usually you don't see that. Usually you're playing East nowhere or West maybe, and they're beating people 8-1, 9-0. You're going, oh yeah, it's great. No, you're going to know really good games. They're going to play about 20. They play 24 conference games. 21 of them will be against ranked teams probably, and then you throw in about 10 more in non-conference. They're going to play about 28 ranked teams when the season's over. You can go out the ballpark almost any given day. They got an All-American pitcher, Emily Kennedy, her senior year coming back last time to go see. It's been a while since there's been this kind of buzz going into the season. Because even when A&M almost made the College World Series, it was in 2018, they were a 16 seed. They almost upset Florida. You went to the number 1 seed, give them a break. But no, this time that they're a legitimate, I would say, candidate to go back to the College World Series.
Well, you mentioned it. Kennedy's coming back. She is without a doubt A&M's ace. You got to talk with Trisha Ford and some players yesterday. Just what is it about Kennedy's game that you think she can take another step forward going into 2025?
Well, it's funny. It's obvious she's added a few pitches, so I think it's obviously a change up, whether it's a screwball or what have you. And she goes, well, you just have to wait and see. She's much more talkative. She's always been very short. You can tell her dad's the head football coach at Montgomery Lake Creek, so she can give you that coach speak. But she's added repertoire. I'd like to see a couple things. She still walked too many last year. Can't walk people. If you're that good of a pitcher, get them out with your best stuff. So I'm looking for her to walk less people this year. I'm looking at A&M to give her more support. If you go back and look at the Texas Super Regionals, great games where they 6-5, 7-6, 9-8. But I thought Kennedy was a little worn out by then because they needed her, rode her too hard, but big games. I don't think Tricia had as much confidence in the people behind her, and I get that. I might have been in the same situation, but I think she's got more confidence in those around her, so that way she throws less, and less means more because she'll be at the top of her game when the playoffs. That's just C saying. I think they're deeper on the pitching staff, and in college softball, you got to have people in the circle.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Pitching means everything in college softball, and especially if you can have the ace that just dominates game in and game out. And we've seen some of these pitchers over the years. I think of like Barnhill from Florida when A&M was good. I mean, just how fantastic she was. You mentioned the girl that transferred from Stanford to Tech, right? She was fantastic. Oklahoma's had a couple pitchers that have just been amazing when they had their four-peat. And so pitching really goes a long way in the softball game.
And why you need it, that being said, is the super regional last year. Let's remember Texas went on and was the runner-up to Oklahoma, which won. A&M in that series against Texas, I don't have my math in front of me because I don't remember the exact scores, but I think Texas ended up outscoring A&M in that series like 25-24. There was a lot of runs scored. You got it because with
A&M gave that pitching staff hell last year.
Because with today's bats, with today's speed, the way the game's played, you can score runs. But I'm talking about the long haul. You're going to have pitching because some of those games are going to be 4-3, but you're going to have a great pitcher to make sure you're the ones with 4, because you get 2 lucky swings, you hit it out of the park these days. Because the way the bats are, the getting back to Buzz's, the analytics in softball, everybody's swinging hard because a pitcher might only make 2 mistakes, but if you hit them both out of the ballpark.
Speaking of the bats, how does A&M's lineup look like?
Well, they got a big transfer coming in from San Diego State, Barbara, I think her name is. She's got a chance to be he is an all-conference type player. Coco Woolley at the front of the lineup makes them go. They've got enough bats. They might not have as much power as they did last year, but Tricia said put that on hold. Maya Perez, who came in as a freshman, they think she can develop into a power hitter.
She had the big home run last year at Texas.
So maybe that is the case. But Tricia Ford has shown she can put together a team worthy of going to the College World Series. And so I think this team's going to be worth, quote, the price of admission. And they're going to play a lot of other teams. They don't play Oklahoma or Texas, and that's kind of a bummer. And she alluded to it, which, it's probably not out there. She goes, then she catch both of them next year. And, of course, Kennerly will be gone, and you hope your younger pitchers you bring in. And I think she's a reload type, not go down. But it would be nice if A&M was playing one of those schools this year.
Especially Texas. I mean,
really? Texas?
When you think about what the return of the rivalry in all sports has meant, just been so many great games and atmospheres. You think about both of the volleyball games were electric. The football game speaks for itself. The basketball games have been crazy. You mentioned how the women's crowd, even though they had, they've lost their best player and they were coming off a really bad loss. The atmosphere was still great for a top 10 team. Vic Schaefer's coming back to town. It's a shame that when you have both softball teams in the top 10 that they're not even playing. The baseball series is going to be nuts. We don't even need to mention that. Everybody knows that. Schloss is lucky it's not here in College Station. He would probably need a whole bodyguard team around him to get in and out of the stadium.
He'd probably eat that up, though.
He probably would. He probably would. But
you're right.
But it's really a shame that A&M and Tech, and what I hope the NCAA tournament committee doesn't do is if somehow A&M and Texas could meet up in a super regional again, I hope they don't do that again, because it just seems like you're just trying to cause drama that didn't need to be there.
Well, I would say this is, if that would happen, it would probably be one of those 8-9 matchups.
Or a 7-10 type thing.
If they both, and that could happen. When you look how good Florida is and everywhere, there's going to be super regionals. When you look at they have like 13 teams in the top 25. I bet you there'll be at least 2, if not 3 super regionals where it's going to be SEC versus SEC. So it could be A&M against Texas or Texas.
Could be A&M against Oklahoma.
So, and I can't really blame them because there's just too many good SEC teams. You're going to see the same thing in baseball. And but the bottom line is that Tricia has mentioned this moving forward on the years next year that they play them. But the years they know that they won't play Texas, they will play them in non-conference, whether that's a one or a home and home, which I would guess they might lean towards a home and home. And that way you do it before conference play starts. It's still huge. It's great for your RPI.
It's great for the fans.
And great for the fans. I think this caught them off guard. I thought they thought the Texas and A&M would be playing each other. And then, I hate to say it, in the SEC hierarchy of things with NIL, the transfer portal, whatever, softball was a little bit down on the list, I'm sure.
Well, whoever was in charge of SEC softball scheduling, big swing and a miss on that one in my
up
opinion.
And in, back off the plate.
Well, hey, I think that's going to do it for this week's episode of the My Aggie Nation podcast. Be sure to check theeagle.com and Cease's dental report. Maybe not that one, but check theeagle.com for all of our coverage on A&M sports. We'll be back next week on the My Aggie Nation podcast.